Welcome back to AI for Founders. I'm Ryan Estes. Today's guest is Henry O'Connell, the co-founder and CEO of Canary Speech, the company turning your voice into next-generation health diagnostic. This isn't sci-fi. Canary analyzes 2,590 vocal biomarkers every 10 milliseconds, producing over 16 million data points per minute. And from that, it can detect signs of anxiety, depression, cognitive decline, Parkinson's, even multiple sclerosis, just by listening to a conversation. In this episode, you'll learn how Canary is transforming healthcare through ambient AI listening, why your voice may be the richest biometric after your DNA, and what it means when doctors, algorithms, and empathy all work side by side. This conversation is for founders building in AI, or human-computer interaction, and for anyone obsessed where medicine meets machine learning. Now, if you love big ideas with a pulse, join our newsletter at aiforfounders.co. Each week, we unpack how founders are turning AI breakthroughs into billion-dollar companies and cultural movements. Don't just read about the future, subscribe and start building it. This episode is brought to you by Kitcaster, the podcast booking agency that helps founders become thought leaders. If you're ready to share your story on top podcasts, expand your audience, and close high-intent deals through authentic conversations, Kitcaster makes it effortless. We book entrepreneurs on hundreds of industry shows every month, handling the research, the outreach, and the scheduling. So all you have to do is show up and speak your truth. Turn your next podcast appearance into your next big opportunity. Visit kitcaster.com to apply and get started today. That's Kitcaster by Moburst. All right. Coffee is great, but coffee won't prep your meetings for you. It'll just keep you awake while you panic, hastily scrolling through LinkedIn at 6:59 a.m. Ambient, however, will prep your meetings. Each morning you get a founder-tuned briefing sourced overnight from your calendar, your meeting history, and the web. It's like walking into every call with the cheat sheet that you didn't have to write. No more scrambling, no more guessing, just context, confidence, and focus. And if you're raising money, ambient investor dossiers are an absolute must-have. You'll know the investor's portfolio, their interests, and their latest moves before you even step into the room. You'll even get a heads up on red flags. Think of it as the caffeine upgrade that your calendar actually needs. Prep while you sleep, perform while you're awake. Sign up for free at ambient.us. Go check it out at ambient.us. That's ambient.us. All right, we're ready to go. Henry, thanks for joining me today.
Well, it's wonderful to be here, Ryan. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. I've been very spoiled that I've been having a lot of conversations lately about the intersection of AI and the medical industry. So I would love to hear briefly an introduction to Canary Speech.
Thank you. So Canary Speech uses voice and conversational speech, ambient listening, to analyze for vocal biomarkers, 2,590 of them, discrete data elements, every 10 milliseconds. And we have that creates a data set of about 16 million data elements every minute. Our voice is the most complex motor function. The creation of speech is the most complex motor function we have, and it's directly connected with our central nervous system, self-consciously controlled. So the central nervous system is driving the vocal cords and the power and rate of respiration and our tongue movement and our cheeks and everything else that just creates speech. And at that level, everything's identical, even though there are hundreds of different languages around the world. So, but all of the elements of the articulatory system are the same, regardless of what language you're creating. And if there's a deficit in a disease, a common cold or a progressive neurological disease, regardless of what it is, it impacts on the ability of the central nervous system to create language, or it leaves a fingerprint in in the process of creating language. And that's what Canary Speech is reading. So when you have a patient-doctor conversation, Canary Speech is using ambient listening. It's non-intrusive. We're just engaged in that relationship in a high-trust environment, similar to the data security that a hospital has. We function at that level. But we're listening to the doctor-patient conversation, and in real time, we're returning up to a dozen different diseases to a handheld device, a phone or a tablet that the clinician has, which may also be doing double duty. It may be doing the transcription services for them, the doctors and patient notes. We're just integrated fully into that platform. And the wonderful thing about it is, because of ambient listening, we're not intruding into that relationship. We're simply listening to the conversation. And it doesn't matter what they're talking about. They could be talking about, a grandson's soccer match, or they could be talking about the last fishing trip either one of them was on. We're able to then analyze the voice of the patient and return scores for anxiety, depression, cognitive health, behavioral health, a whole range of different things. And that allows, as a clinical decision support tool, it allows the doctor to engage with the patient in a more informed way with objective information, maybe even helping them formulate the next question, or make a referral more accurately. So that's what Canary Speech is doing.
Incredible. So you talk about ambient listening. Is this hardware? Is this software? Is this an app on your phone? How are you capturing the conversations?
So we use all common audio capture devices, video conferencing, smartphones and apps, smartphones or tablets, telephone systems. We're on the Samsung Watch, for instance. And so a person at home could actually do an assessment using the audio capabilities of the Samsung Watch. We can do it remotely, or we can do it in an office. So ambient listening is a non-intrusive way to monitor, with permission, of course, to monitor the conversation that's already ongoing. So we don't have to ask the patient or the doctor to take a moment and give us an audio sample. We simply listen to the natural conversation they're having. What it ends up doing is, rather than taking a patient and putting them in a room and say, take this test, which can be nerve-wracking anyway, you just simply are capturing audio during the process of a normal conversation like you and I are having. And I could be monitoring myself, and I could have my anxiety, depression, mild cognitive impairment, Huntington's, Parkinson's disease, all analyzed for either the level of anxiety I have or the presence or absence of mild cognitive impairment. So all of that happens without intruding on the relationship between the doctor and patient. And that was really key. We wanted to provide them with an objective tool that provided actionable, meaningful information, but without intruding in their relationship. So that's what ambient listening allows.
Unbelievable. This is so interesting. So what are the markers in voice for, let's just say, anxiety and depression?
So because we have 2,590 different things we look at, machine learning helps us work out. We do feature extraction of all of that every 10 milliseconds of audio. And that produces this enormous file, 15.5 million, 16 million data elements. And then machine learning helps us work out a correlation between that individual, that specific individual's anxiety level, and a doctor's diagnosis. So we've built models working with clinical teams that have tight associations, tight correlations with the clinical assessment. And then independently, just from the audio itself, we can measure then the anxiety of a person that would correlate to a diagnosis or a assessment they would get from a clinician. So that's how it's built. This algorithm that is the result of that model building can then be deployed across populations.
Well, it's interesting that in the application, I'm really interested to hear because like stress and anxiety and depression, everybody's voice is going to be blown up for those to varying degrees. For example, I
Mhm.
might have a little anxiety doing this podcast, but it's good. That's why I do it. I just call it butterflies. But
Yep.
I can see the value really if you're looking for precursor kind of indications from Alzheimer's or Parkinson's, like, stuff that might be harder for a clinician, maybe just because of proximity, maybe just because of the frequency of their visits, maybe because people get really excited and some of those markers aren't there. So finding signal in everyday kind of ambient conversations, maybe you're able to identify it early. Is that kind of the idea behind it?
It is. I mean, Canary Speech comes from canary in the coal mine. So an early warning system. Miners used to take a caged canary in with them, and if the oxygen levels were coming down, and the air might not be safe, the canary would respond to that before the miner did. Then they'd grab their canary and they'd run out, you know? So you are correct. In illnesses that are difficult to identify early, and particularly at the primary care level, because we're deploying with primary care physicians, with pediatricians, with individuals that may not see specialized diseases. You know, they're not the neurologist or the psychiatrist team that are see hundreds and thousands of these patients, are familiar with them. So the primary care is seeing someone twice a year on an annual checkup, and Canary Speech can, as I said, non-intrusively, it can measure about a dozen different diseases and just simply alert them to the potential that a referral should be made. That's what the clinical decision support component of this is. So we provide them based on vocal biomarkers. We're providing them with an assessment that would indicate that mild cognitive impairment or that Huntington's disease or Parkinson's or an MS or anything like that might in fact warrant a referral. Now, in talking to some of the doctors, one of the chief medical officers at one of the hospitals we're working with said their deployment is done like they do everything else, intelligently with thought. And they said, if we have a primary care doctor who is watching after a patient who has recently had cancer treatment, we already expect them to have elevated anxiety and depression. So the primary care doc is going to maintain that relationship and manage the patient through that post treatment, rather than make an immediate referral. So this is, again, information, but it's meant among the array of information a doctor has to provide them with an ability to make a decision on objective information with respect to a referral. Okay.
Yeah. So
Primary care.
the human in the loop will always be the doctor. Canary is going
Right.
to give recommendation based on the data. We detected XYZ. This might inform your opinion one way or the other, but ultimately this relies on the doctor in the loop.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're looking, our brains are wonderful, as you know, and they're looking at, all kinds of information from their experience and their training, their relationship that they have with this individual, or the relationship they have with 100 other individuals that are similar or presenting similar characteristics at the moment. They take that all together. That expertise allows them to make a decision about the care of that patient. This is another one of those elements. What's nice about it is that it's objective and it doesn't matter whose hand it's in. It's going to give you the same information from person to person to person to person. So it's an objective piece of information that's reproducible in a clinical setting.
Does the information also travel to the patient?
It can. I mean, it's up to the doctor, of course, just like anything. The information that's gathered on a patient in a clinical setting is generally information that's communicated to the patient. They have a freedom to know that. They have a right to know that. And they'll communicate with them on that. We do go home with some patients. Again, if a clinical team decides that the patient's treatment can be augmented or improved or value added by going home with our product, they can go home with our product, and they can do assessments in between treatments or in between meetings in an office. They can be doing assessments. They can also use our product to do remote assessments of individuals or virtual meetings on, say, a Zoom or a Teledoc platform, a Teams platform. And we're integrated into the Microsoft Dragon Copilot platform as well. So when a doctor is using the Dragon Copilot to do transcription services, Canary Speech is part of that and can provide them with the assessments that we've been talking about in real time.
Incredible. I love it. It's so interesting. A lot of the conversations we have on this podcast is about kind of the human computer interface and the success of ChatGPT and the rise of AI in the last couple of years largely was due to the fact that people are excited about using the chat function. When you sit down and you tap what you need into the little box and it responds and you're chatting back and forth like a text message. But
Sure.
without a doubt, we're going to have all this other signal that we'll be able to interface with AI with. Me personally, I think chat's boring. I don't like typing. I don't want to talk to it really, but I'm always talking. So this becomes a really interesting signal that once we have kind of like the devices that are keeping multiple tabs on us, we'll say. It's listening to you, it's looking at you, it's smelling your hormones, it's feeling your blood pressure, it's taking tabs kind of consistently. This becomes a very important biomarker of like how are you communicating? And I've never really heard of this before, but it makes so much sense the way that you said, the biologically how moving our mouth and making sounds it's very complicated. So of course it's going to play a huge role in cognitive health. But I mean, the deeper we get, and I'd love to, maybe this is a good question for the future. What other kind of like biological markers do you think can be unlocked from speech? Now, you and I know startups aren't built in boardrooms. They're built in the wild, during 3 a.m. bug fixes, botched launches, and that one meeting where everything almost fall apart. That's what Code Story is all about. It's a podcast where tech founders break down the make or break moments behind their products, what went wrong, what went right, and what nearly wrecked everything. Hosted by Noah Labhart, Code Story goes past the highlight reel and into the honest stuff. Late pivots, brutal bugs, and somehow coming out alive with a product people actually love. If you're in the build stage, or the scale stage, or the please let this feature work stage, I can relate. This show will speak to your soul. Listen to Code Story at codestory.co or wherever you get your podcast. Just search Code Story. It'll be right at the top. Because great startups aren't born, they're forged, one hard moment at a time. codestory.co. Hey everybody, you know what's crazy? I've been sitting on a gold mine this entire time and I didn't even know it. My Gmail inbox, literally thousands of warm contacts who already know and trust me. But here's the problem every founder faces. How do you turn those relationships into revenue without feeling like a sleazy salesperson? That's exactly why I've been using warmstart.ai. And honestly, it's been a game changer for my business. This AI platform connects your email, analyzes all your existing contacts, and helps you identify who in your network might actually be interested in what you're doing. Then it writes personalized outreach messages that don't sound robotic or pushy. The best part, you review every single message before it goes out. No spray and pray nonsense. This is relationship-based selling done right. My listeners know I only recommend tools I actually use, and Warmstart has literally helped me reconnect with people I'd lost touch with and turn those conversations into real business opportunities. If you're a founder struggling with outreach, check out warmstart.ai and use code AIFF to get $50 off your first month. Trust me, your existing network is worth way more than you think.
Speech, the 2,590 features that we look at today, if you just talk about the vocal cords, which seem very natural, the vocal cords vibrate, controlled by the central nervous system. They vibrate. The speed at which they vibrate impacts on the sounds that we make. But they also, the change of that vibrational characteristic, whether it's speeding up or slowing down, also is indicative of what we're trying to communicate. For instance, if we're trying to communicate alarm, we see an acceleration of the vocal cords to a much higher tonal element and then a drop off, and they come back pretty quickly. But one of the examples I give someone is if I'm downtown and I hear a scream, I know if that's a grandmother or a mother at a child's soccer match versus someone who just was in an accident. And there's a difference.
Yep.
And I don't know exactly how our brain has learned that, but I know the difference, One is an excitement yell, and the other one is a fear yell type of thing, an accident has occurred or whatever. And so it is so subtle, and then combine all of that with how our respiration is coming into play and how our all the rest of the articulatory system, including our tongue and our cheeks and our mouth and our jaw and how we're moving things. All of that is all self-consciously controlled, but the central nervous system is doing that. So the impact is that you have this very, very dense and rich piece of information that is affected by a range of different things, whether, as I said, it's a common cold or it happens to be a progressive neurological disease, like Parkinson's or something. And so the wonderful thing, we're working on MS right now, multiple sclerosis, and multiple sclerosis is difficult to diagnose and often goes multiple years without a diagnosis. And we know that because an individual's first diagnosis is multiple lesions on their spinal cord and in their brain. They may have had MS for 10 years. We're looking at identifying that as early as 10 years before that. I mean, so to really be able, because there's medications, there's therapeutics that can treat it and prevent those lesions from ever occurring. So those are the kind of simple positive things I think can happen. AI is integrated into all of this. So not only does that sound like AI, using machine learning and building algorithms and deploying those, but the whole concept of ambient listening required the creation and use of AI. So when we're listening to each other, we're capable of separating those two voices. We can identify who the patient is and who the doctor is, speaker identification. We know when we have enough sample. We don't need to have continuous sample, so we can stitch things together on the fly, 5 seconds here, 12 seconds here. We know when we have enough, and we also know the quality of that data. So if we get a section of data when a cart was going by and the noise characteristics were too high, we'll just wait for another 5 seconds. So we can do that all automatically. And then the rest of it is the processing of that data, which takes truthfully milliseconds of time.
Yeah.
And
Well, I think where it could be helpful down the road too is the problem with neurodegenerative disorders is the patient doesn't notice.
Yeah.
So as if you, let's say Canary Speech is just running in the background at all times, and you can start to get some kind of warning where it's like, hey, Ryan, you might be having a stroke, buddy. Like, we should probably send a robot to pick you up and bring you to the hospital.
It's interesting you say that. I mean, it's intuitive. We are introducing the latest version of our ambient capability is Canary Ambient Continuous Monitoring. We're introducing that at HLTH 2025, which is the end of this month in Las Vegas. So that's a brand new capability. Again, we added some additional AI to it. We recognize when someone is talking. There are certain applications, if we're operating within a room, let's say a patient's room, we can actually monitor that room for aggression level. Nurses are being attacked daily, by patients or by family members. It's causing a tremendous loss to the industry, not only financially, which is estimated to be $20 billion a year, but they're losing 20% of their first-year nurses. They're leaving.
Nurses are getting attacked? I haven't heard that.
Yeah, they're getting attacked, and it's happening. It's happening. I'm talking to healthcare institutions that say, we've got 17,000 nurses, and we have 2 nurses attacked every day.
Oh my gosh.
And so what Canary can do is we have an aggression model, and we can take that model and actually there are AI monitoring systems in the room for watching the movement of patients, whether they fall or don't, when they get up, go to the bathroom, when a doctor comes in or a nurse come in, do they clean their hands, compliance issues and patient movement issues and so on and so forth. Well, Canary takes its algorithm and it runs it on that computer. And it wakes up when someone's speaking, and we can measure aggression in as many as 5 people in the room at a time. So we've created a green, yellow, red light response. We're going to show this at HLTH. So a green, yellow, red light response that shows up on a handheld device that the nurse has anyway. And she looks at it before going in the room. If it's green, you're walking in, but if it's yellow or red, you're going in with someone. You're not going in by yourself, So that's the kind of thing that I think AI and speech technology can provide. And the combination of them is what's important, because a lot of what we're not only using AI to do what we do, but we're using AI to facilitate and deliver what we do. And it's the entire spectrum. The other element, and I was speaking with you about this, the other element that's just one of the tickets to the game is you've got to be operating at the same data security, the same integrity that a hospital operates at. So if you're a company that's providing AI and services like we do to a healthcare institution, you've got to be able to say to them and actually perform at the same level of data security and data integrity that they're performing at, which Canary does, of course. We operate in a high trust environment. We're ISO audited and certified. So there's a whole range of things that as you're building this out, you just need to put them all together. And if you do, then you're a good partner in healthcare.
Yeah, 100%. It's interesting on a couple of levels. On one side, I'm curious about the other side of the coin, which is to say that, like, let's say I have a baseline, and then perhaps for whatever reason, I have some kind of neurodegenerative disorder that Canary is going to help me at least not diagnose, but like recognize. What about the other side? If I have if I'm at normal and there's a downside, what about the upside? What about non-normative states of consciousness? So I guess what I'm asking is there a use case where Canary Speech could see if I'm in some kind of like heightened state of consciousness, if I'm in some kind of enlightened state potentially? And what I'm talking about specifically is there's a great spot in Denver called the Denver Zen Center that has an amazing lineage. And I like to go there and meditate. And I love learning about Zen because it is kind of like a path of disciplic succession, which means the teacher is with you and they monitor you. There's a vibe check. So they can see through what you're saying, how you're saying it, what your responses are to koans, let's say, for example, where you are in your path of enlightenment's a heavy word, but where are you at in your path? Is there an application where Canary, it might be useful to say like, wow, Ryan, you're running a 12 right now. You're doing really well, kind of like a treatment for the well, something like that.
Sure. And I think the answer is yes. I think that what we find, and you see this too, you probably feel it in yourself, that after participating in such an exercise, there's I don't know how to relate it best, but there's almost like a gentleness in your voice.
Yeah.
There's a settling. And if we can hear that in the voice, and we hear that from people who they enter a room and they bring calmness with them. And it's in their demeanor, but it's also in their voice and how they're communicating. And if we can hear that and perceive that, just like we perceive anger, that's just another thing that is communicated in subtle ways in our voice. And I often say to people, it has almost nothing to do with the words we're speaking. And I'm not exactly sure how these elements get communicated to our brain. Our brain is, of course, a wonderful machine learning tool. I mean, it's one of probably the best on planet Earth. And
So far.
notwithstanding the dolphins, I don't want to take it away from them. And also octopus or octopi, probably really smart too. But, we've got this great machine learning tool, and people who doctors, clinicians, nurses, they do this all the time, and parents are doing it with their children constantly. We do it with our parents, our older parents, and we're able to understand that they may be saying one thing to us, but we know that the truth underlying it is they're suffering at the moment. And so we don't say to them, "Oh, you're suffering at the moment," because we have compassion and empathy, because we do the same. We suffer at the moment sometimes. But we join them in that somehow. We embrace them. We go for a walk with them, whatever it is. I think the answer is yes. The simple answer would have been just simply yes. But if you can measure one end of that spectrum, you're measuring the other end of the spectrum too.
Yeah.
And I think that's a wonderful biofeedback thing,
Yeah.
where you could have continuous monitoring that would allow you to have really true biofeedback. And I apologize for doing that to you. I just saw my little battery come on with a red light.
Oh yeah, now you got to plug it in. For sure. No, and that, I think for clinicians, a lot of these kind of like indicators would be really helpful because it's got to be, a cause of burnout that you're always getting kind of the worst side of your patients and they're attacking your nurses, and it gets really intense if you have something that's always kind of listening, and it can say, "Wow, Ryan, when you got out of that float tank, boy, you were like very relaxed and calm for like 3 days. Maybe that's a really good thing for you, you know?" I mean, I'm just fascinated with the application of AI across the board with kind of our medical system, largely because one, it's really frustrating because compliance is so high. There's so many different things you have to overcome regulation wise to get products to market. And then you also have the culture of kind of medical practice as well. I mean, just anecdotally, myself, I had to fire my doctor recently, after a couple of years, because it's like, you're just not giving me the kind of care that I'm looking for. Now, what I see where kind of medicine is like moving to is, more of a combined effort. Like, I want to have informed AI helping me through. I want to be doing telemedicine. I want to be able to send a video that I can communicate with my doctor. But these are things that they're just unwilling to do. Like, "Oh, I don't want to do a telehealth check-in. You have to come in." It's like, well, boy, that takes 4 hours out of my day for a routine checkup if there's nothing wrong. You know what I mean? Or I'd like to get my blood drawn and done the panel over here where it's convenient to me, and you can send the results over there, and that becomes problematic largely just because people have certain ways they like it done. So we're kind of at this place now where we have these new therapies, whether it's peptides or it's hormone replacement therapy. There's controversy around all these things, but like, it's in the culture, where people are looking for performance enhancing therapies. People are looking for AI aided information. I know that this is also controversial where they're like, "Okay, we'll provide the information to the physician, but we'll keep it away from the patient, because largely the patient's gonna be like, 'Hey, AI is recommending this, and you're saying the opposite based on your experience, but now I'm questioning which is more valid.'" So there's a lot of friction right here, which I think creates kind of an environment for something really cool to come out of it. What is your basic take on where we're at as kind of like a healthcare industry and the potential for improvements and the some of the bottlenecks that you're running into?
Sure. So right now, I think where people are comfortable is a clinical decision support where you're trying to create a force multiplier, really. You're trying to provide more information, help improve the quality of care through accuracy and objective, meaningful information while they're still with the patient. So it's not, I go take a test over here and that information gets to me after the patient has left, and I look at it and I go, yeah, I don't have the time to touch that. And they're coming back in 6 months. They just don't have that time because they're seeing so many patients, and the demand is so high on them. So what we're trying to do is provide these clinical assistants, clinical decision support information, something that augments what they currently have in real time, doesn't intrude in their life. And when you take that approach right now, and that's where people are, and AI will grow to be bigger, and the tools will get better, and they'll get more expansive, so that there'll be more information immediately for a doctor to see, and a well-trained doctor will embrace that information and try to translate that to the care of their patients. And I think that's going to take a period of time. In the healthcare industry, maybe 5 to 10 years for full adoption of things. Where right now, as you know, you can do remote, if I'm not overstating it, you can do remote surgeries using robotic surgery capability, where you can have a trained surgeon in Massachusetts working with a team, but a surgical instrument that's being driven by him in Massachusetts because he's the expert at it. And he's able to do this remote operation on a patient. And those things have been around for a while. They'll probably continue to expand. I think they're going to be at the fingertips of trained clinicians and doctors who have spent thousands of hours of their life learning that trait, understanding it. So that when you go in, if something is slightly different, they've seen slightly different 100 times or 1,000 times. They're able to deal with slightly different because they've seen it so many times. Machines may not immediately recognize slightly different until they learn it. But they'll learn it generally at the hands of a clinical person. They're going to be more intelligent because they're working side by side with a clinical person. We're capable of building models across a whole range of different diseases, but our ground truth is the diagnosis done by an expert in the field. And then we correlate to that. Now, what does that do? Well, it standardizes that assessment to a team of experts. And then that standardization could be used as an objective piece of information across 1,000 different physicians. You can even take it down to the primary care, allowing them to make informed decisions about referrals to the specialist. So the specialist is seeing more appropriately people they need to see, So a force multiplier in that case.
100%. Very cool. Okay. I'm going to just kind of read out some of the research that I've done on the company. And once I'm done, I want you to correct what I got wrong and then fill in anything I missed. Okay. So we have founding year 2016, raised about 13 million, 9 issued patents, over 2,500 speech features and biomarkers are analyzed. We have roughly 40 employees, about 8 million per year in estimated revenue. What am I missing about Canary?
So we now have 14 issued patents and 12 pending. We have raised a total of $26 million to date. The rest of it is pretty accurate.
This episode is brought to you by MoBurst, the AI-first growth engine trusted by iconic startups like Calm, Robinhood, Reddit, Uber, and Google. MoBurst is a digital full-service mobile-first marketing agency that helps companies to scale and become category leaders. Whether you're finding product market fit or ready to accelerate growth, MoBurst delivers creative, data-driven solutions that help with scale and efficiency and impact. At MoBurst, we're not just guessing what works, we're predicting it. As an AI-first agency, MoBurst uses cutting-edge tools to analyze user behavior, adapt creative in real time, and uncover hidden growth opportunities. The result, marketing that's faster, smarter, and built to convert. From early-stage startups to global brands, we've helped hundreds of companies overcome complex challenges, unlock new audiences, and optimize every metric that matters. At MoBurst, we believe that creative thinking, advanced technology, and data are the core drivers of success at scale. If you're serious about scaling your business with precision and purpose, it's time to talk to MoBurst. Visit moburst.com and let's build something category-defining together. Hey founders, let me ask you this. Are you building with AI or getting left behind by it? If you're serious about scaling smarter, faster, and bolder, you need to check out aiforfounders.co. It's your go-to resource for cutting through the noise and actually using AI to grow your startup. Each week, AI for Founders drops a sharp, no-fluff newsletter, dives deep with expert guests on the podcast, and hosts monthly workshops where you can get your hands dirty with the real tools and strategies. Whether you're pre-seed or Series B and beyond, launching something new, or just staying sharp, AI for Founders gives you the edge you need to win in 2025 and beyond. Hit aiforfounders.co to subscribe to the newsletter, tune into the podcast, and grab your spot in the next workshop. And it's all free. Build smarter, move faster, think bolder with AI for Founders. Now back
So
to
the
the
patents.
show.
Talk to me about the patents, and particularly the importance in kind of a health tech type business.
Sure. So, this is true of AI. A lot of AI is being driven by open source software. So, a lot of people, you'll see 200 companies in the US alone who are doing avatars for patient engagement. There are no patents protecting any of that. And
Yep.
so these 200 companies they're going to be, 5 that emerge as the top companies. That always happens, and it will happen. They'll be more innovative. They'll be more driven. They'll be better executors, meaning to execute against plans and produce the better mousetrap, if you will. But none of it's protected by patent. In the case of Canary Speech, when we looked at the field, and I had the benefit of working with a co-founder who has been a friend for 40 years, Jeff Adams. Jeff Adams led the team that built Dragon Naturally Speaking. He built the first natural language processing for speech to text. He led the team that built the Amazon Echo. So, I mean, this is a guy who created new tech. All of those were brand new technologies, never existed before. And in a bagel shop in 2016, we were talking about doing something together. And the healthcare field and speech were a natural opportunity, but there had not been a successful product in 25 years. And partly because their approach was kind of wrong. And you spend 25 years doing something, it's probably not right if you don't have a product. And so we approached it from vocal biomarker standpoint. So when we entered the field, our first 2 patents created our first 2 families. One was the identification of biomarkers in speech that correlate with human condition and disease. That was our first patent. So we looked for features in speech, not words, but features at the vocal biomarker level, the primary data area, that correlate with diseases, and the ground truth would be a clinical assessment. The second patent was the use of vocal biomarkers to create algorithms for the routine measurement of human condition and disease in a clinical environment. So those were the first 2 patents that we built on, and we currently have those patents are issued in the US and Europe and Asia and elsewhere. And in the US, each of those 2 patents now have 4 patents in their family. So then the next patent family we call it paired neural nets, but what it really accomplishes is it says, if you have met with an individual in January and you're now meeting with them in June, we can actually compare their vocal features, these biomarkers, and give you a delta on a range of diseases instantly. We can tell you where they were 6 months ago, where they are now, and what the change is. And we can do that across time longitudinally. The next 2 patents that we have applied for, they're pending now. And those patents have also issued in multiple jurisdictions. The next 2 relate to this AI enhanced functionality. So in order to make this practical, our goal was to put a tool in the hand of a clinician or a clinical team member that was practical. They didn't have to do jumping jacks to make it work. And that's the ambient listening and the AI intelligence, speaker identification, sample quality. All of those things come together using AI. So we call that AI enhanced functionality for healthcare. And that's a patent that we've applied for. And then the third is to take large language models, which are not discrete, meaning they're about specific individuals, but when you gather 1 million of them, they no longer are. They're general information about a condition. And so that general information can give you an indication that you might have a particular diagnosis or a disease from that. It's an indication.
Yeah.
But it's not specifically about you. What Canary Speech does is listen to your specific voice and say the likelihood that you have Parkinson's or Alzheimer's or anxiety or depression is this.
Yeah.
So specifically you. So, but there is value in taking non-specific information and very specific information and combining them. So the last patent area and we've tested that, it enhances the information. So the last patent area is the 5th family of patents is that one.
I mean, I just can't think of all these interesting applications. One, I'm a singer. And so I love any kind of application of the voice, especially ones that are non-intuitive. This is kind of predictive generative work based on a relationship it would get to know your voice. A couple of them come to mind. Let's say that the Venn diagram of domestic violence and raised voices is probably a concentric circle. If you have somebody who's out of jail on parole or something, and you have an app that could say that Alexa is starting to notice if your voice is going up, in volume, then probably it can just be like, hey, perhaps we should call and make a reservation for a massage, or maybe you should take a walk around the block. There's a lot of different things you can do with voice. I'm thinking about myself. Like, I'm a pretty calm person, generally speaking, but I'll get loud every once in a while. And that is if my sports team is losing, or lost. Then I'm going to be really upset, and it's confusing to the cat.
Very acceptable emotion, incidentally. So I walk every day, and I was out walking the other day, and my watch vibrates when I hit a mile. It vibrates when because I walk about 6 to 8 miles a day, every day. And so,
Wow.
And then it gives me what my average for that mile was and what my overall average is and blah, 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 but it vibrates. And that causes me to look at it. Well, imagine we were using Canary ambient continuous monitoring. And when I got to the point that you were talking about, my watch vibrated. So it just vibrates to say to me, hey, you're getting in an upper level here.
Interesting. Yeah.
And it could bring me down. And I was thinking about this on this walk because it's vibrating. And I'm going, because I'm like you, I wear all my emotions on my sleeve.
Yeah.
Every emotion. People look at me and they go, so what are you upset about? And I'll go, I'm not upset, Okay, I am a little upset, but I wasn't going to respond because I'm older now and I'm able to control that. But I can't control my mouth. I can't control what my face is showing. And, but if we're in a conversation with someone and our watch vibrates, that could be like, hey, that's personal. Calm it down,
Yeah. Or I could be like, like, Henry, Canary's telling me you're yellow. Are we good here, buddy? Like, what's going on?
Exactly. Yeah, that's the exact, it's kind of green, yellow, red thing.
Yeah.
Or if my watch has noticed that over a period of days, my anxiety is, 20% higher than it normally runs, 20% above where it is last month, it could vibrate and say, check your anxiety, just automatically for me.
Yeah.
And these are things that we could do today.
Well, and
And
speaking of that, I mean, right now, creating agentic solutions is like I'm doing it on a weekly basis, looking for opportunity. Is there an API I can pull from Canary to make an app for Alexa so that when it senses me say certain words, if I could just, or decibels or anything I wanted to monitor speech wise, I could create apps around that and create automations.
So Canary, again, very intuitive. Canary has this platform of capabilities, and right now we're focused on the healthcare space, um, specifically on this doctor-patient interaction, whether it's in a video conference or it's in a real-time meeting or over a phone. However, these capabilities, we have taken those capabilities in order to support them. We have written interfaces that allow a person in customer support who doesn't have an engineering degree, has a reasonable knowledge level, but not an engineering degree, to go in and actually design an experiment for a customer. Customer calls and says, I was trying this and it wasn't working. And they go, let me get back to you. And a half hour later, they get back and they said, hey, I've run your scenario through our system in 100 different ways. And these are the 6 that perform best, So we will, in about a year, come out with a platform that would allow individuals to actually interface into the capabilities of taking voice, doing feature extraction, building it through a model based on the design that they have indicated. I want to look at this, and this, and kind of check boxes. And then it'll go through and it'll build them a custom little model that they could then deploy either on the cloud or actually deploy on their computer at home.
Let me know, because I'm telling you right now, like I've been married for 20 years and my wife has a certain tone that in years prior, I might walk right into an argument. But now I know if I just bring her a little bit of chocolate, like everything's going to be fine. So I could use that information to program the robot that if it senses that tone, it's just going to be like, how about a Kit Kat? And I'll be like, yeah, let's get it together, sweetheart.
Amazon drops it off at the door. Alexa automatically just orders the chocolate for you.
Yeah. No, it's
and it has 2 profound impacts. One is that she gets chocolate, and second is she knows you cared enough to know when she needed that chocolate.
That's right. That's right. I knew enough to let the robot make the decision. So we'd just be eating chocolate all the time. It'd be great. It'd be amazing.
Yeah.
Put
some ice.
You mentioned dolphins. This is probably tangential, but like, have you seen the reports that they're like using AI to kind of decipher whale calls and dolphin calls and stuff like that? Fascinating.
Yeah. I mean, just like our dogs are capable of understanding, 250, 300, 400 words, whatever it is, they're also, there's a different bark for fill up my water or give me some food or let me out of this house,
Yeah.
There's different barks and communications. Well, dolphins, it's estimated dolphins are communicating at a level near ours. And if that's the case, AI could be the tool that translates what they're saying. I just saw a report where they used AI with some cuneiform, Sumerian tablets that have never really been well understood. And they took pictures of these, digitized them, and then went through and said, what are the patterns that I haven't seen yet, or me as a researcher of 20 years looking at it haven't seen? And AI is pulling stuff out where we may see the emergence of an understanding of that language that we would never otherwise have, which I think is really kind of cool. I think, go back, whatever it was, 5, 6, 7,000 years, and we can begin to understand a complex language that they were writing in.
Yeah, totally. I know, it's so exciting. It's simultaneously, there seems to be a race. I mean, there's a lot of kind of doomer information out there that's kind of scary about AI, and that could be right. But like thinking optimistically about, particularly in medicine, like all of the opportunities that are coming very, very soon are just fascinating. What inspired you to get in the front line of this? Was it that bagel meeting where you're like, you know what? Speech, medicine, we should do something here.
It really was.
Wait,
Jeff
real
and I
quick,
were. Go
what
ahead.
kind of bagel was it and what kind of cream cheese was it? I want to know if there's some
So I like
magic.
I like cinnamon raisin bagels,
Yeah,
and
you can't beat that.
with just butter, honestly. And And so we were there to eat a bagel, and we were there, ended up being there for 8 hours. We closed the place down.
Wow.
But I said to Jeff this really simple but true story. I said, Jeff, after he was telling me about trying to use words to understand different things, where the successes had been and where there just wasn't success, And of course, Jeff had created first ever 4 or 5 different products using voice and speech. So I said, Jeff, forgive me, because obviously I don't know anything. And we met when he was at the NSA and I was at the NIH. And I was doing research in neurological diseases. He was building mathematical models to de-encrypt spy messages. That's really fun, foundationally what speech is, And so I said to him, my daughter, my wife and I had 5 kids. My daughter, Caitlin, when she would come home her junior and senior year from soccer, 6 o'clock, 6:30 at night, and I'm there, I could see when she walked across the room from her gait, whether it was a good day or a bad day, When she turned and looked at me, I get it. And so then I would say, how was your day? And I would get the same answer that every parent gets, regardless of where they live in the world. It was fine. And you keep going, and I go, time out, come back, And so I'm not a hovering parent, but I'm an engaged parent. And so she's talking with me about her day and we figure it out. And I said to Jeff, I don't get that. I don't get to do that anymore. She doesn't live with us anymore. She's married and she has her first child, and her husband, and that's normal. I don't want it. I don't like it. I'd prefer she still be here, but that's not life, And I said to Jeff, I'll admit I call her twice a week. No, it's probably more often than that, but I'll admit to 2. And I said, Jeff, when I call my daughter and I don't have the physical cues anymore, and I can't see her gait and I can't see her face and I can't see her body language, and it doesn't matter what she's saying to me, and it's within moments of the call starting, and it's irritatingly accurate. I know if it's a good day or a bad day. I know if she's excited or sad, or I know the whole range. And I'll say to her, honey, what happened today? What's going on? Or what are you so excited about? Or whatever it is, And we do that one for another. And I said to Jeff at that moment, I said, Jeff, how are we doing that? If we could do that in a handheld device like on the phone, if we could do that for clinicians in hospitals, because they're already doing what I'm doing, but we could make this an objective tool. So that was kind of the aha moment. Jeff's answer was, I don't know. I don't know how we're doing that. And I said, okay, well, that's what we need to figure out. Let's go figure that out. So, so that's how it got started. Let me just tell you one more thing that comes from something you mentioned. One of the questions I was asked last week on Friday, in this conference, I was asked the question, the concern is that AI is going to be eliminating jobs, or that not as many people will be employed, or it's going to take over for programmers, and it's going to take over for engineers, and it's going to do this and it's going to do that. And they said, what do you think is going to happen? What will be the total addressable market from an employment standpoint? And my answer was that every aspect, everything will increase. Everything will. AI is going to do a whole bunch of things for us. But I said, what do you think? I said, do you think when we were digging holes with our hands and someone came along, the really bright cave person came along with the first wooden shovel, do you think we dug less holes? Do you think fewer people were digging holes? Absolutely not. More holes were dug. They built the pyramids after that, for heaven's sakes, So, and so I said, AI is going to expand the number of people we need. It's going to expand the wonderful things they get to do. And it's going to increase our capacity to be better than we are. I said, it's not going to cut jobs. There are going to be more holes dug in the future than there were in the past. So that was my answer.
Totally agree. Just briefly before we end up here, can I tell you about one of the holes I was digging?
Sure, absolutely.
So I was working on a product that was a voice cloning tool, largely for legacy, for our grandparents, so that you
Mhm.
could capture their voice, and then if they weren't there, maybe they could read the night before Christmas or something to the grandkids and do fun stuff like that. I thought it'd be like a fun way to talk to my grandparents personally. So I was talking to my mother-in-law about this tool, and I was like, "Hey, you think Mimi would be interested in that?" That was her mother. And she's like, "Yeah, I think she really would." She was into it. I was like, "Okay, cool." Well, a few weeks later, Mimi passed, rest in peace. And we're at the wake in San Diego, and I go to my mother-in-law and I'm like, I'm so sorry. I wanted to do this interview and I never got to it. I'm so sorry. I really wish I had." And she said, "No, it's okay. I did." She's like, "After we talked, I went and interviewed her." And so we were at the wake and outside by the pool, and she like brought her phone out and hit play. And the characteristics of Mimi's voice that I heard that I'd never really heard before. Like I heard kind of the frailty a little bit, but also I heard all the humor. And what I really heard was the Philly. Like you could really hear Philly thick in her voice that you never really noticed before. So like this kind of like use of voice as a signal, I think has unbelievable upside and so much potential. What an amazing company, Henry. I'm really impressed.
You're very generous, and I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Canaryspeech.com is the website where people can check out the product. What's the best place for people to follow you online?
Well, LinkedIn is a good place online. This podcast will be a wonderful one for them to follow. Um, and LinkedIn is the best. I can be reached at henry@canaryspeech.com. And I answer my emails all the time. I love it. When people write me and they say, "Hey, I saw you at this, and I was wondering, have you thought about this?" I love that kind of stuff. So later in the evening, when I get a moment, I sit down and I'm answering those emails. I just love it. I mean, I've got people all over the world asking me questions, and some multiple ones, and I ask them. So it's you never stop learning. You never stop learning, and the way you learn best is people ask you something, or you ask them something, and you listen. I mean, the interchange is unbelievably rewarding.
Unbelievable. Well, I got a feeling I'm going to be emailing you at about midnight, being like, "All right, Canary Speech is great, but I got some dolphin speech. Come on, you and me, let's do it."
It's perfect.
Thanks
I
so
love
much,
it.
Henry. Really appreciate the
Thank you.
conversation.
Same here.